welcome to Next Gen Tennis. I'm Mike Baugh, and with us today we have Bill Patton. In today's conversation, we're going to delve into high school tennis. Welcome, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mike?
I'm glad you can hear me now, so that's a
Yes.
good start.
Gonna solve the technical issues.
So you're in California, I'm in Florida, so I think between the two of us, we're responsible for high school tennis players in the country. That's a joke. But
I was preoccupied. I was fiddling with my phone here, trying to get this recorded like that. I don't know if anybody can even hear this. All right, sorry, Mike. I'm not paying attention to you. I'm gonna just forget about Facebook. I'll edit this out. All right, clean start. Here we go.
So you're like a millennial now. You just forget about Facebook and you don't worry about it anymore.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. My 5,000 friends would miss me.
Oh, they would. So high school tennis.
Yes.
The big conversation is how can we get the competitive nature in high school tennis back, or should it just be recreation, or what is the realm of high school tennis, and where is this thing going? Because I think in different areas, in different schools, there are different cultures, and it's a different beast everywhere you go.
Yeah, no, you know that's exactly right. It's different everywhere that it is. So don't try to make it something that it's not. I mean, you can enhance whatever it is you're doing as a high school coach or as a concerned citizen in the tennis world. A private coach who wants to help out high school tennis, just figure out where is it. What's the current state in your area. Think about what direction you think it ought to go. Get together with other people in your area and go, hey, what can we do to make it just a little bit better? Because I think people go too far from there. Everybody's wants to go 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. Instead of taking a really slow incremental growth thing of, all right, I have 12 players on my team. How do I get 13 next year? Right? Because, that would be 8% growth. So, I mean,
here's the question. That 13th person that you're trying to add to the team, should coaches be more focused on trying to add that 13th person and have them be in their top 5 of their team, or should they try to be adding the 13th person at the bottom? So as a
who are you going to say no to? Here's the funny thing. I'd rather have 12 that want to be there than have 13 and have one that doesn't. So, I mean, there's, it's quality over quantity a lot of times. That's going to help a lot. I mean, I think also the other thing we get focused on is that larger numbers are always better, right? But, when it comes to weeds, smaller numbers are better. Yeah. And this is something that, long ago I gave a talk about, imagining tennis as though it were an awesome garden, probably 20 years ago, my backyard, we got it landscaped and the landscaper was amazing and he made it look like a park, right? Now, then the weeds come and you got to pick the weeds, right? You got to keep it up, right? But before it was just this weed infested, awful looking place, but there was growth. So I think, some programs that are currently actually pretty popular right now have grown like a weed and they're choking out other things. So now you don't hear about clubs having club championships anymore, right? There are a lot of clubs that don't have Saturday morning drop-in and whatnot. High school tennis has actually stayed pretty steady. So it's the golden goose of all tennis right now, because not only has it stayed steady, but it has slowly grown. In the last 10 years, it's gone from 325,000 players to 345,000 players. And that's not fast. That's not fast growth. But, I would like to see it go from 345 to 350 this year. And so that's my goal, is to start seeing that very gentle slope start to spike. And then also to see people get a hold of those 80,000 graduating seniors. So, I want to stay more with the big picture of, what's the whole thing like, and then people can take the information and put it to use in their area. But basically, if we go back to where we started, it's like just figure out what's the state of high school tennis in your area, and what's good about it, what's not so great about it, and try to fix the things that are not so great. And don't get this thing in your head, I guess, about focusing on it as a player development, to lead to a Grand Slam champion.
Yeah, because it's very tough, especially because when you're dealing with high school players, especially the ones that on the first day of practice, you have to make sure they even know the rules.
Right.
This is something I talked to a couple players one time, and I said, would you expect to make the high school JV basketball team, not varsity, but JV basketball team, if you didn't know the difference between double dribbling and traveling? And they all looked at me and they're like, no. And then why do you expect to come out to the tennis courts on the first day of practice and you don't know how to score?
Because James Harden. Okay, move. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, the beard. But even I would assume the beard would even know the rules of tennis.
He might, but look, he takes so many steps to the basket. But no, you're right. So this is what you're saying is really right on, which really basically says we have the lowest standards of almost any sport.
Yeah.
I went to the tennis summit thing in 2014, or maybe it was 15, in Indian Wells, and I raised my hand. I said, you know what? This is a group. I'm sitting in the back, and they're like 450 people. It's a TIA event, and I said, I'm sick and tired of us having a second-class citizen attitude. We're begging people to play our game, like there's something wrong with us. And desperation's a poor cologne. What we got to do is challenge people. Do you think you're good enough to play this game? I think if we walked with a little more swagger, because tennis is the best sport in the world, and it combines so many things from so many other sports. When you play tennis, you're the owner, the general manager, the quarterback, the head coach, the defensive coordinator, the pitcher, the catcher, right? And the batter. It's all these things. So that's why people get addicted to tennis, because it's so multi-sport skilled that you can take people who have certain attributes from different sports and they will be really good tennis players. So I don't know. I'm just tired of this whole thing. But then, hey, if a kid wants to join the tennis team and we can accommodate them and we can get them hooked on tennis in high school, let's do it. And then, yeah, and I would say don't teach them the rules on day one. I would say teach them, I'll go downs, ups, flip-flops. Here's a forehand. Now you can play tennis, right? Hit your forehand up there. Hit your forehand over here. In a couple of weeks, I'll teach you how to hit a backhand.
So on that, it's we want to be accommodating. Just to summarize, we want to be accommodating, but we also need to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
I think we need to have more pride in our game. I think we need to sell tennis as the greatest sport in the world instead of instead of having this attitude of sort of begging people to play, oh, we'll make it as easy as we can for you because we know you might quit if you get discouraged. No. I mean, what we really ought to do is keep people challenged. Kids want a challenge. I mean, when kids say why do they like sports? Number one, it's fun. Number two has to do with like self-improvement. They want the challenge of getting better. They want to be with their friends. They want to improve their skills, blah, 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 right? So we really ought to be in the game of challenging them to go to the next level, and that includes all of the things that lead up to high school tennis, like the red, orange, green, stuff. I mean, I think that whole thing could be done better and would lead to a lot more growth.
Let me ask you a question here. When we're dealing with high school tennis, we're dealing with what should be a competitive sport.
Right.
Okay. Should we hold ourselves to say, if this was a class, it's a 201, it's a 301 course that we're now teaching instead of the 101 for high school tennis, and put it on the players to make sure that before they come out for the beginning of the season, they have that 101 and 102 course done, and they are prepared before the first day of season. I feel that not a lot, but there are some players that come out and they are unprepared. They're not ready. Now, I'm all for no-cut coaching, but we need to make sure that 101 and 102 course is completed before they even get set for high school tennis. That they need to learn the game before they even try to start competing for the game.
But then maybe you need those bodies on your team or your team's not viable. I mean, I've been in that position where I needed fresh red meat. I needed people that had a pulse and were breathing because I needed somebody to play their doubles. So here we go. I mean, dude, a couple years ago, I stuck a racket in a girl's hand and worked with her for like 20 minutes right before we played the first place team in league. And she played singles for my team.
But here's
and I'm like, hey, if you can hit like 12 or 20 shots back in this match, that you will have succeeded.
So here's the thing. You're a professional. You're a tennis professional. A lot of times the high school coach is the math teacher or the science teacher. And like I said, it all depends on what area you're in.
You know what? I think anybody could do what I just did. I mean, it doesn't take much to teach somebody a forehand grip and then just go, look, honey, you have no backhands today. Just hit everything with your forehand as much as you can. If it comes over here, do that. I mean, I've done that. And I mean, and a lot of times, we have very commonly kids show up to the team with no experience and they need to be taught, a forehand and a serve and maybe some backhands. And then they're playing in 2 weeks. And now, but we kind of digressed from your original point, which was what are the prerequisites? But I think instead of putting them in the back, put them in the front. First, develop a program. Then increase the challenge. So here's an example. My first year at a school, I got hired really late, and I didn't actually get hired until like 2 days before practice was going to start. So I had no contact with the team. I had no way to communicate with them about doing anything ahead of time. So now I'm in there. We get things going, and then I started doing a summer program. So the next summer, I had 5 kids out of 40 came to work with me in the summertime, and I took them around and we played junior matches and they had a fun time. And that became the nucleus of a first championship in 26 years. Then all of a sudden, everybody on the team went, uh-oh, I just got passed up by 3 different people who I used to previously be able to beat, and now they're on varsity and they're winning matches. and then the next year, I think I had 10 or 12. And then in a couple of years, then, I ended up with like 20 or 25 kids, and kids from other schools coming to join us. And then it became sort of de facto. There was never said that you have to do this or you won't be varsity, but it just, in fact, became true that the kids who came to the summer program had a good shot at being varsity, and the ones who didn't. So yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do. You can only live your life forward. So, we can try to do as much as we can to prepare, but, sometimes it's just go time, move forward, and then let the improvement of other people provide the motivation that will seed the enthusiasm for the rest of the program.
So here's another situation scenario. A local team is very good. They're very strong. All of their players in their top lineup play events. They play tournaments. A couple of them are looking to go D1. Their 3 and 4s are maybe looking to go D2, D3. They decide that the players on their team decide they're going to not play high school tennis, and now that school no longer.
Okay, I'm barely hearing you, Mike. So blast me.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah, better.
Okay, so there's a team. Their top couple players looking to go D1, 2 and 3, or 3 and 4 looking to go maybe D2, D3, and now they decide as a team that they are no longer going to have a season, so they can focus on getting better, improving, and playing tournaments, because high school tennis is essentially a waste of time for these players. What about that situation? Because
is it a waste of time? That's what I want to, I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know if it was a waste of time. I mean, there's the perception of a waste of time, and then there's really a waste of time. So how many competitive matches can they get in the season? How many matches do they have where they know they're going to win 6-0, 6-0, but in a live match situation, they can practice a new aspect of their game? I mean, that's a pretty rare opportunity. It's live, and you can serve and volley and still win 6-2, 6-2, where you would have won 6-0, 6-0, but now you're working on your serve and volley game. Or, you're working on your slice, or you're doing something. You're working on your short angle, top spins. I mean, time spent is never wasted, Mike. I have like all sorts of pithy expressions for today. But so I think it's a matter of how well does the coach handle that. Now, later when we kind of get into the UTR thing, I think UTR is a really big key and a part of the solution to that problem. Right now I'm coaching a last place team, and the other teams don't really want to play us. We are their waste of time, and so we eat some bagels, and we're sometimes happy to get some breadsticks. And when we can put up some crooked numbers, we're feeling all right, So, like, for instance, my number one player is improving dramatically because he's the worst number one player in the league. So he gets to play everybody who's better than him. And he's starting to be able to frustrate people because they were hoping to be done 0-0, and it's not happening. And then, like the other day, the other kid hit a serve right at him with the intent of trying to intimidate him. And that made me really happy. I was like, wow. So on the changeover, I was like, look, you just got a really good compliment there. You're getting to this guy. And my guy doesn't get intimidated. He doesn't care, right? He's tough enough. But I was like, look, you're getting under the kid's skin. This is good. Good on you. Keep going. Try to eke out another game. So, what is worthwhile? I think coaches blow it when they don't find a way to make that throwaway match worthwhile. I mean, we played a team that was just horrendous, and We won all of our first sets 6-0. So then immediately then I go, all right, what are you going to work on? What are you going to work on? What are you going to work on? I mean, each player then had an objective of something that they were going to try to build into their game in that second set. So
it's all about how well can you make the lemonade with the lemons you're given. I think a lot of times
yeah. Well, yeah.
You try to make as
So, another thing too is that how well does the coach plan that match? Okay, so I know that there are teams that left their number one player home when they came to play us.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't care, right? So with UTR, so I think it would be good to get into the UTR thing. I mean, I think this is really huge. Texas has pretty much gone full bore into UTR. They're going crazy. And then I don't know if people are aware, but UTR has officially made it free for 2019 for teams to register and record all of their matches. That is huge.
For high school. And they're very
for high school. High school teams can record all their matches for free. And then now, once we get into two teams have UTR ratings that they can see of the other school, now you can plan your lineup. It's like, okay, I have 6s and 7s and 4s and 2s, and they have 5s and 3s and 2s and 1s. So, 7, you're not playing today. But I'll take 6 and 4, and I'll just bring just enough that I know that they can't beat me, but we'll have good matches. And this has been a best practice for me. I mean, I've actually had coaches get mad at me because I didn't bring my full squad. And I'm like, well, I mean, what's the point? I mean, wouldn't you rather have your kid play a match that comes out, 4-3? Rather than 0-0, I mean, they don't really benefit from that. I mean, a closer match is better for everybody. It's better fitness, it's better mental challenge, everything. So, so there are going to be people who get butt hurt, but that's they have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, but there's going to be people that get upset no matter what happens or what they do. So
yeah, they're just unhappy people. So
And one of the happiest coaches I've ever met had a team that lost every single match, but he knew going into it that they were going to lose every single match. They were more focused in on how were the players progressing throughout the year, and that was their success. Not every team is going to be primed to win districts or sectionals or make it to regionals or make it to state. Every team is on a different page in their tennis book. And every player on that team is on a different page. So you can't expect the same results from the same players or the same teams, but you want to at least be competitive. And I think that's one of the key things is if you know that your team's not going to be competitive, then the players going into the match don't have a good feeling, and it just makes everything a little sour. But if you can make sure that your top players are going to get, your 4 or 5 really good competitive matches in, I think that overall will help the overall quality and the overall experience of high school tennis, because that's what I think we need to look at. It's the overall player experience for those retention and growing numbers. The retention factor is huge because it's a lot easier to get a player in through the door the first time. It's a lot harder to get them in the door the second time if they have a bad experience. It goes along with every sort of customer service, member relations, whatever you want to call it, that you could talk about. And at the same time, I don't think that a lot of coaches are really focused in on that. I think a lot of them are phoning it in from time to time, and it goes to every single practice. Now, players may not like every single practice, but it's a lot like eating your vegetables. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and do the things you don't like to do.
Right.
And really, just as the coach, you're the facilitator of the practices and the matches and the lineups. One of the hardest things I had to do was tell my number one player that had a 10-match winning streak that she wasn't going to be playing that match to continue her perfect season, so to speak. because we didn't need her to win the match, and we need to get some other players in the lineup to get them qualified for districts. Then I've got phone calls, but that's part of being the coach. You're going to have to deal with the parents. You're going to have to deal with the players' attitudes and things like that. And sometimes doing best for the team is best for the team.
Yeah. Well, and if we go back to this team that you're talking about, where there were 3 players. See, but the funny thing is then that kind of defeats itself, because those 3 players can easily do 2-on-1 drills until the cows come home. Yeah. There's so much you can do with 3 good players, and there's a lot you can do with 2 good players and a ball machine and a coach who knows a little something, right? It's that standalone player who nobody on the team can hit 2 balls back with them. That's the player that maybe you need to make some kind of accommodation. But, if we go back to that really good team, I would say go schedule the toughest possible competition you can find. I had a team like that where there were, we had probably 16 players who had tournament experience or more, and only 10 start. I mean, this team was pretty loaded. We had a lot of depth. So I just started scheduling the toughest matches I could find. I scheduled the Northern California regional runner-up, and then and they beat us 9-0, and that was a really nice wake-up call. And they were like, because they had not been beaten so thoroughly for a long, long time. And I made sure that was match number 1, because I was like, all right, buckle your seatbelts, guys. Here we go, right? You realize how far you have to go to compete at this level now. And, that was part of what set the stage for being able to play at a much higher level. And then, that team later that season took out the number 1 seed in sectional play. And then the next year beat 2-1 in the same day in 97-degree heat. But a lot of that tone was set by playing the NorCal runner-ups. We have 2 divisions. At that time, I think we only had 1 division. I mean, there's all high school tennis in California is generally played in 1 or 2 divisions. We don't have all these, 5 different divisions that a lot of states have. So it's pretty brutal.
Well, here's the other thing too, is when you class tennis, and say you have, in Florida we have 4 classes, very often you see that the smallest schools have the best teams, because the smallest schools are the private schools, and they're the ones that play year-round. They have the private coaching, they have the private academies, they play the tournaments, and they're playing year-round.
Right.
A lot of times you'll see the 3A or the 4As, every once in a while you'll get a team that's really good, but when you're looking at a whole district of, say, like 8 teams, there may be only 1 or 2 really legit teams in the larger categories, because the other teams, they're more participation, they're more recognition.
Right. Here in NorCal, it's hard for the private schools to compete with the schools that have 3,000 to 5,000 students, because that's a pretty big talent pool to draw from. So we used to wipe up those little private schools. So I know it's different in your area. I mean, so and it speaks to how there are no cookie cutter solutions, because every area, every region has its own little flavor of how it comes out. So you just figure out, where are we? What's the next logical step to improve something? What's the biggest weakness that we have, and how can we mitigate that weakness? Or what's the most manageable weakness? I mean, sometimes the biggest weakness is just something that will always be there. So why worry about it? Just accept it and work on what you can work on.
I grew up in a very rural area of Indiana, and some of the best schools and the best teams were because they were the larger high school. But there's a big difference. I went to a high school that had 300 students, grades 9 through 12. It was public. we had a very small pool to pull from. But then all the tennis players on the team were athletes, and they played basketball, they played baseball, they played different sports. Where a lot of times what I'm seeing now is a lot of the tennis players in some of these, and now that I'm in Florida, a lot of the tennis players in these other schools are tennis only, or they're tennis in band, or they're tennis in golf.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not the true multi-sport athletes that involve the running and the twisting and the rotation and the throwing that we saw in the rules. So it was actually fun. The other day, we had I have a message I have to take here soon. So we have to cut it short here soon. But
how soon until our hard stop?
Probably about 2 minutes.
Okay.
I need to get back. It's a high school match later today I have to talk about. So, anyway, long story short, our private school kids got to play a group of rural kids and had a very competitive match, even though they had no idea where they were coming by. And it was just great to see the kids going out and playing against each other. And both coaches were like, oh, I hope we lose so we can have a wake-up call for our teams. And it was fun. It was fun.
Interesting. Yeah, I never wish to lose, but I will schedule some tough matches and understand that it could happen. That's for sure.
Well, if it doesn't count.
Everything counts, doesn't it? I don't know. It either all counts or none of it counts. I don't know. I let people choose. But anyway, I guess we're done. But hey, thanks for the talk, Mike. And we'll have to pick this one up again. I think there's a lot here that we can talk about on how to make high school tennis better.
And we're going to delve into UTR a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like we said, this high school platform for UTR just got released within the last week.
Yeah.
So I talked to Dave Fish last night. There's still a few bugs that they're trying to work out, still things that they're trying to do. You have 50 different state associations with 50 different rules. And then even within those state associations, there may be even different platforms and different ways that everyone looks at high school tennis. So there's no real clear-cut thing across the nation. It's not like basketball where it's 5-on-5 or football that's 11-on-11. Tennis, it's very different state to state.
But UTR is pretty flexible. There's a lot you can do with it. So it should be able to meet the challenge. Anyway, it sounds like you got to go. So
take care. And thanks, guys. And we'll see you next Tuesday, if not sooner, at 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific.